For 3, I just stated that they're requesting the 7 variances, and that may increase the possible adverse influence of the proposed uses. For the proximity of these intense autocentric commercial uses adjacent to the saltwater marshes of Church Creek would likely create a potential gasoline runoff drainage issue. Therefore, the request may not meet this criterion. And 5, again, they don't comply with all the rules and regulations because of the degree of variance requests. And 6,
Church Creek?
that was 5.
Did you say something about Church Creek? There's a creek?
Yes, yes. That was for number 4. For 6, gas stations and fast food restaurants are auto-centric uses. Vehicular traffic and pedestrian movement on adjacent roads may be hindered or endangered based on the proposed design and variances requested. Like I said, the traffic study is required, but it has not been done yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is anyone else? Mr. Boykin? I'll get to you next, Ms. Smalls.
I'm sorry, I'll be glad to stand and let her go first if you like.
I can wait.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. Ms. Working, a couple of things. Again, maybe I'm looking at it a little differently, maybe a little unconventionally perhaps. But I understand your concerns about the traffic. Might your concerns be allayed to some degree if the variance that comes later asking for access to Highway 61 for ingress and egress as well as Old Parsonage Road, if that variance would be withdrawn or denied by this board and only allow the access to occur on Old Parsonage Road, is there not a traffic control device right there at that intersection? A traffic light? And so that would not impede the flow of the traffic more than it would be ordinarily with the traffic light if we only allowed the access from Parsonage Road. And then on the question regarding Church Creek and flooding and drainage, looking at the park plan, it looks like a pretty substantial pond is planned as part of the park plan. I mean, it looks fairly large, might even as much as 3/4 of an acre to an acre. Might that provide some relief for drainage and water retention?
Yes, it will.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Ms. Smalls?
I was just going to say, I guess Mr. Boykin was asking about looking at the entire property, and I guess the other portion, what they have planned for it is a park, but they've only applied for those Greenbelt funds. Do we know if those funds are guaranteed? Don't they have to go through a process with the Greenbelt folks and be approved? And if that doesn't get approved, then what happens to the other portion of the property? Does the city have other funds to purchase it? So I was just trying to get some clarification surrounding that.
Yeah,
I don't think those funds are guaranteed until they get approved.
Yeah, that would be a great question for the applicant to answer when they.
Okay.
Mr. Boykin?
Well, this might be a question for Jenny and Mr. Eugene. I've been studying this and kind of like trying to look at the devil in the details, and I share Ms. Small's concern exactly. And I had, in fact, took some time to write out, this is premature, but I guess I'd like the opinion of our council should this come up later. If the board were moved to grant these special exceptions and or any of the attached variances, I guess I'll start with the special exceptions because it seems that the variance would be moot if the special exceptions aren't granted because they're dependent upon the site plan for this property, which wouldn't happen if the special exceptions weren't granted. Mr. Eugene, again, would a condition be allowable to the effect that said that these special exceptions approvals are invalidated should the Charleston County Greenbelt funded park project purchase for the remaining 4.22 acres fail to come to fruition? Could there be a condition worded somehow like that that would make an approval, should the board do it, conditional that that park happens, that we don't create a site that planning staff has made a good case that maybe doesn't belong there. I think that maybe it might, should you take the project in its entirety, but I certainly wouldn't want to grant the special exception without the promise that the rest of it happens. I think that would certainly condition my vote to support it, and I agree with Ms. Smalls on that concern.
Yes, you can make a condition that's contingent upon the condition of them receiving the approval.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think we just need to word it such that.
Well, I'll look for your learned knowledge to help me do that. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Merchant?
I had a similar question to Mr. Boykin, and again, maybe this is for you, Mr. Hugie, but could we also limit that to the 1.52 acres? Because one could argue the 12 recommendations from staff, you can make all that work on 2 acres, but you might not be able to make that work on 1.52 acres. And so I think when we're thinking about conditions, making sure it's still tied to that 1.52 to make sure that the applicant can achieve those things. So that's one question. My second question is just relative to the City of Charleston's review of this. I saw that in the packet. Can someone comment on that and how that may or may not affect the applicant down the road? There seems like there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts down the road with this.
Yes.
I'd almost rather all this be figured out first and then we come back. But anyway, so a comment on Mr. Hugie about the 1.52 acres with the conditional to the green belt, and then maybe a comment about the City of Charleston and how that overlays with this.
Can you please repeat your first question? I'm sorry.
Just relative to what Mr. Boykin asked you, can we also, can that condition also require us to hold the applicant to the 1.52 acres of developable land for the gas station and the fast food restaurant with all these other conditions applied?
Yes. Yeah. You could limit the condition, as I understand the question by Ms. Smalls, and I believe also implied in Mr. Boykin's question, is the use of the additional land to make sure that there is enough space for compliance. But yes, you can limit the condition to the amount of acreage that's going to be that the board thinks is sufficient for the project. As to the second part of your question, because of the use of the property, there may be some dual zoning here. And so all we would be able to do from the county standpoint is to ensure that the applicant goes forward with any City of Charleston requirements. We can't enforce any of those. The applicant would have to do that, separately.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Boykin.
Boykin?
Real quickly, I agree with Mr. Marchant. I guess, Mr. Hugie, is that 1.52 pretty much locked in because of the form of the special exception request showing a site plan and also limiting the acreage to 1.2 in the request itself?
Yeah, I mean, the applicant will be, their application is based on their site plan. If they need to alter that, they can do so. And if the board thinks that, and obviously the board can't tell them what to do, but if that's a concern of the board, you could present that to the applicant and see what their response is. If the acreage is a concern of the board.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, to the staff, attorney or Ms. Perkin, I was looking through all the paperwork, and I know there wasn't a traffic study. Was there any kind of environmental study as far as the impact of that application for the gas station as well as the restaurant and such that they're applying for, versus the how the proposed green belt project is going to come into play? Was there any kind of study concerning that, whether it's pollution, air pollutants, gasoline pollutants, or anything like that?
Jennifer, do you know the answer to that?
Or was it just a a decision to say a gas station, we're gonna apply for a playground? Or was there any kind of study for that or anything like that concerning trees, removal, pollutions, additional trees, anything?
Jennifer Stiles, do you know the answer to that? If there were any additional studies done?
I do not know. I think that's a good question for the applicant.
Yeah, we didn't receive any copies of the
I
study.
would, I would just want to put out there, Mr. Williams, that to the degree that any such studies have been completed, obviously the board can request those, but as I understand the statute, that's not a requirement of whether or not they get approval. So I just want to make sure in terms of how you would use such information.
Absolutely. I was just wondering for the purposes of tonight, in consideration of the larger plan, the proposed plan, the current plan of the gas station, just for facts and whatnot. But I guess if there's no information on that, then
I understand.
that, right?
I understand.
Mr. Boykin?
Real quickly, and I was going to say this in response to Mr. Williams, and also, I guess, as a question to Ms. Working. If you look at the two images, one of the park plan and one of the existing property, it appears to me that the majority of the property in its current state is impervious surface, whether it be buildings or asphalt or pavement. And it's sat that way for some time. So I'm sure that's producing a tremendous amount of runoff the longer it sits in that dilapidated state. In the plan for the park, it looks like, again, like 75% of the property is going to be converted. Now, there will be, an allowance for the fire department, which I think is a half acre. Not all of that impervious. I think it's got some landscaping and so forth. But without a study in our hand, it certainly appears that it has the promise of being in a much better environmentally friendly position after this transformation occurs. But is that fairly accurate, Ms. Working?
Yeah, I would say that the majority of the site is covered with impervious surface right now.
Well, what I was wondering was, is the proposed gas station, the runoff, all those things that was mentioned earlier, was there any information or additional information, I guess we could ask the applicant, if that they know of, that additional green space is going to offset that building, the build that they're proposing? That's all. That was my question. But I guess we can ask the applicant, like you said.
We'll give you that opportunity, Mr. Williams. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Guys, do we have any more discussion? Any more questions? Very good. Ms. Working, is the applicant available?
Yes.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Would you like to speak first?
I believe that Michael Harper is going to do the introduction on this one, if we can get him on.
Okay, I'll leave you on. I'll just meet you. Mr. Harper?
Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Can you please raise your right hand? I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Harper.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good. We thank you for coming before this board and presenting your testimony. Please tell this board why we should approve your application, sir.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the board for for hearing our application. And I guess I'd like to say to start, I'm Michael Harper with Gramling Brothers. I represent Church Creek Plaza LLC in this application. And obviously, based on Ms. Working's intro, I've got a very steep hill to climb here. But I would like to just take a minute to explain to the board kind of how we got here. And I'm going to kind of take a lead from some of the questions Mr. Boykin has been asking, because our goal from the beginning here has not been to figure out how we can put a gas station on the corner of Parsonage and Ashley River or Highway 61. This has been a long-standing collaboration with a number of different groups to try to transform this 5.7 acres that has sat fallow and underutilized for many, many years into something that is an amenity and usable for the community. And so I'd ask the board in considering our application not to consider just the 1.5 whatever acres on the corner, but to consider the entire 5.7 tract that sits here that is not being used for anything or certainly has a higher and better use. We've been working for many, many months now with the Greenbelt Committee and then subsequently with St. Andrews PSD to try to transform this back 4.2 acres into a passive public park. It started that way with the Greenbelt Committee, and then it kind of made a little bit of a turn into also providing a new, much needed fire station for St. Andrews PSD. And part of the negotiation that we had with all the various county bodies were, at the end of the day, the economics have got to work too in order to make all this happen. And so part of how we got here was that we would figure out how to make a number work for Greenbelt and for PSD if we would be able to use what little piece we had left on the corner of Parsonage and 61 for some type of commercial redevelopment use. And that is how we got to where we are today. We believe that we can take this 1.5 acre piece and we can redevelop it in such a way, even if it is a convenience store or a restaurant. As many people, in our opinion, will be looking at this building from the park as we'll be looking at it driving by at a high rate of speed on Highway 61. So we come to the board asking for the special exceptions that we need in order to use the remaining parcel so that the back piece can become this park. And it's not just a passive park for pedestrians and for bikers. It's also some much needed drainage that this particular area of town needs. And so we feel like we can redevelop the corner parcel, even with these particular uses that we come to the board seeking, to where it's an attractive development for everybody enjoying that park in the back. We've had conversations with county staff. It wasn't mentioned in our intro, but we've had conversations with county staff that we would be willing to defer the vast majority of these variances in order to sit down with staff and to try to make this as attractive a corner development as we can with these two uses. But we'd be willing to defer those variances until a later meeting if we would be able to have these two special exceptions and the one most critical variance, which would be to build this building to the back of the property, because we feel like the gas tank pumps and the canopy being out front will block those from the park. So having the building in the back and these two special exceptions are what's really critical to us And if we're able to receive a favorable vote from this board, then we're prepared to, immediately sell the property in the back to St. Andrews PSD and kind of start the groundwork to getting this park and this new fire station done, which I know they need immediately, yesterday, as they say. So that's really where we are now. We're not here just starting with a gas station and working from front to back. We have been working from back to front here. So with that said, I'd certainly be willing to take any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harper, for your testimony. We have a couple questions, and Mr. Boykin is raring to ask a question or two. Take it away, sir.
Well, Mr. Harper, it's a pleasure to speak with you tonight. I want to say, first of all, we've kind of had some forward, I guess, knowledge of this case, and I'm a big fan of the Greenbelt project in Charleston County and the work it's done and the property it's made available to the public and protected at the same time. And having driven past this property on more occasions than I can recall, I would even go so far as to call what it was a blight and probably a nuisance. Certainly derelict would probably be some of the adjectives I would use for it, because it's just been run down for so long. And I know the community has not been happy about that. So I'm personally excited to see movement like this. I guess my first question for you is getting the commercial space secure that you got the approvals you need to establish that commercial use. Is that kind of predicate the ability for y'all to sell the remainder of this property to the Greenbelt and I guess St. Andrews Public Service District?
Yes, sir, it does. We have to figure out some type of use on the corner that actually works in today's world. And so, we're obviously, we have worked to a number with St. Andrews PSD for the back. And as I said from the beginning, it's a holistic process. The whole thing's got to make sense. And so, doing that particular deal with PSD in the back and this particular development up front would make the numbers work and would result in this project moving forward.
So if I understand, I guess, the workings of this, y'all would sell the property to the St. Andrews Public Service District, who would use Greenbelt funding to effect that purchase. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes, sir. That's exactly accurate.
Okay. All right. Well, a couple of things. I mean, for me, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'm inspired by the thought that went into this collaboration of public and private entities working together. It's certainly an ambitious project, and I understand how hard it must be, because you've got so many players that and maybe some sort of order of operation for all these pieces to fit together. But one of my concerns is, we got a lot of letters in opposition, and that we get that a lot with a lot of projects. Everybody would love to see, no development in one big park, and I understand a lot of times that's not economically viable. The property owner's got a stake in it, and I understand, there's money involved, and I get it. For me, I understand the kind of compromise and allowances. One of the things they were concerned about, obviously, was more traffic trying to turn in and out of businesses on 61. Could you speak for your clients to say whether or not that could they live without the access to 61 and make their access off Old Parsonage Road? Would that be something they could live with?
Well, Mr. Boykin, there's a curb cut there now. And I think what I can say for sure is we could absolutely live without a full access curb cut. We don't want people trying to make a left turn, heading out toward Walterboro, we don't want people making a left turn in that curb cut, nor do we want people trying to make a left turn out of that curb cut from the development. We do feel like, you know, some more limited type of ingress egress would be helpful, whether it's just a right in or a right in, right out. We feel like that may alleviate some buildup of traffic at the corner of Parsonage and 61, but we don't want, nor do we need any kind of full access on that curb cut.
So if there were perhaps some type of raised median in the roadway to prevent folks from trying to take that left, and having a small access just for folks to enter in and enter, I mean, obviously make a right into it, make a right out of it, that might be something that would be workable.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only would we be okay with that, I think we'd welcome that. I think we'd actually like that.
I think that was one of the conditions staff had put in there, should we approve this. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and we were discussing this before we heard from you, and Ms. Smalls on our board actually raised the issue, and I completely concur and agree with her. What another condition that y'all might be agreeable with is that we tie the successful, I guess, closing on the park property and the park project to the special exception should we grant them. In other words, some of our concerns are that, you know, deals fall through all the time, maybe no fault of yours, but we're concerned about, I agree with the staff that this may be a little intensive, although I will concede that there's a Hardee's like 2 doors down, there's a Circle K across the street, there's a CVS across the street. So I grin a little bit. I understand that the county is trying to maybe reshape things, but we can't ignore what's already in existence right around this property. So, and that's why I asked Ms. Working about how she looked at this, and I totally understand her applying the overlay district, and I don't disagree with her conclusions on a lot of it, but again, I look at the whole project and I see a lot of good to come out of this, especially as we're concerned about the Church Creek Basin and all the drainage issues, and that pond looks like it could be a great benefit for a lot of that, and again, all the green space for the public. So would you be amenable to some type of condition like that? Again, you know, I realize you've got other steps to take, but I think this board would feel more, again, if they were to approve this, more certain and allay some concerns that they knew that should the enticement of this park, which is part of the existing track, fail to happen, that the approvals for these special exceptions would be invalidated. Is that something y'all could also live with?
Yes, sir. I'd like to see the specific language, but I don't see that as a problem. And, you know, I'd just like to say that PSD and Greenbelt have been very patient with us. They're ready to get started. We know that they need a new fire station. They want this drainage. They want this park, but they've also understood that this is a critical component for us too on the corner. But we don't want to delay that any, 1 minute more than is necessary.
All right, and then I'll end with this, and I'll turn it over to everyone else that may want have questions. I looked through these list of variances you've got, and it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the last one that talks about the orientation of the gas pump dispensers and majority of the parking along the street, and I think that also deals with the location of the building to some extent. So that would be variance in BCA case 01-2100448. If that was a variance we approved, would you be willing to forego the rest of those? And I think you mentioned that earlier. I just want to confirm that that's what you meant.
I can't say, Mr. Boykin, that we would forego those. I can tell you that we would sit down with staff and we would not pursue one more than we absolutely need. I mean, these are the big three for us, and we would take a very hard look at whether we needed any others.
Let me rephrase it then. How about this? How about would you withdraw those with the right to bring them back, withdraw those from tonight's meeting, except for the last one, if we were to approve this, and then agree perhaps not to bring any more variances or special exceptions any sooner than the April BZA meeting. It gives planning staff a chance, because I'm sure things are moving all the time, and as y'all change, it would give them enough time to reevaluate and come out and work through whatever of these variances y'all wish to bring back or any additional ones.
Well, Mr. Borkin, that wouldn't give staff enough time. It'd probably have to be May.
Okay, well, I'll defer to the chair and make it May. Again, not stopping you from doing it, just asking for more time. I know everything's moving, but if you
Yes.
got the big three done tonight and then step back and knowing you had that done with the conditions we talked about, and then that would get, and then you come back and bring what you have to, so that our staff has enough time to really work through those, variances and any other special exceptions.
Well, and I'll say this. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with staff, and Ms. Working didn't mention this earlier, but we were prepared to defer all these other variances,
Okay.
Other than the big three, with the plan to come back in March.
Okay.
And so now to say May, I mean, Ms. Working, is how much time does staff really need? I'm ready to sit down tomorrow on these others and try to scratch them off the list.
Well, if I may, let me invite Ms. Working to comment, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would schedule it for the April because we don't know what we're scheduling, and we already have a schedule for March. So
Then-
as of right now, we don't know which of these 6, if are gonna go to the next meeting. And I think that I wouldn't withdraw them. I think I would just defer them.
Okay. Would that?
Yes, sir. I will
Would that
I will
work for you, Mr. Harper?
absolutely defer till April.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's all I've got. It is a mouthful, to say the least, in all this. So I will stand down and defer to the rest of the board. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, I think I saw your hand first.
Yes,
Did I
sir,
come-
good evening. Good evening, how's it going? I'm new to the
Good evening.
board. So I have a couple questions. As Mr. Boykin mentioned, there's a lot of letters in opposition. So there was probably like at least 45 letters of opposition. And so I was looking at some of these issues that the residents have. For instance, one of the issues is that they believe there may be additional contaminants going into Church Creek put forth by the gas station from increased cars, traffic, gas runoff, and those kind of things. As it applies to gas, you're applying these exceptions, these special exceptions and variances are being applied for the gas station and a restaurant and a convenience store. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're applying. That's what it's for. Okay, I just wanted to get it straight in my mind. So how would you answer that? Because I asked the question earlier as far as it applies to pollutants and gas runoff. I think the staff mentioned runoff from gas possibly, and those kind of things. How would you kind of decrease that concern? How would you deal with that concern in this proposal?
I can speak to that, Michael, if you want.
Let me start. I'll say this, Mr. Williams. First of all, I know you brought this point up earlier. We've done extensive testing on the environmental front here. We've done phase 1 and phase 2 environmental testing here. No conditions. So we feel good about the work we've done. And we have, again, just part of the collaboration with PSD and with also Greenbelt, we've agreed to share all stormwater and to create a master stormwater plan between the parcels. There'll be both water quality and water quantity treated on site. And so we feel like we got a really good plan in place between both future parcels. And we understand how environmentally sensitive this particular area of town is, obviously Church Creek and everything else. So it's something we'll be paying keen attention to.
So from your testing, did you do any testing on possible pollutants, increased particulate matter and pollutants, anything like that? As far as from the gas station or from the gas, most likely maybe the pollutants.
We did. We did a phase 1 and a phase 2 testing, and would be happy to share all that information. We don't usually submit it with BZA applications, but we've shared that with the county as part of our negotiation, and everybody's agreed. Let's put it this way: Greenbelt and PSD are comfortable. They're ready to move forward with closing based on those reports, and I'd be happy to share those with you as well.
And what were those big 3 areas, variances that you, are we still talking about the special exceptions or the variances at this point? We're looking at special exceptions, right? Okay, we're still looking at special exceptions, right?
I don't want to speak
That's
for.
correct. That's correct.
Okay, so I'm just gonna talk about the special exceptions then. What about the traffic issues that people have concerns about, sir? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we know that anytime a drive-through, anytime you propose a drive-through in the county and the city, obviously a traffic study is necessitated. So we know that's coming, and kind of the same thing that Mr. Boykin and I were just discussing. We understand that the curb cuts are going to be affected. We understand, the signalized intersection at Parsonage and 61. We're going to have to deal with. I guess what I'm saying, Mr. Williams, is we know that this site plan you're looking at now is going to change. DOT is going to be involved like they always do, but we feel like we can work through those particular points with the county on where the curb cuts go on Parsonage and what kind of curb cut you have out front on 61.
I think those are my only questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Marchant, we have your opportunity, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Mr. Harper, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Marchant.
I have a comment sort of for the benefit of the board, and certainly welcome your comments, but I think it's worth having some appreciation for what you're doing with the Public Service District in Greenbelt. This area greatly needs more green space and parks. So I applaud that, and I applaud your work there. I think it is worth noting that the exhibit that we see on the screen right now is a little bit misleading. Drawings matter, and the colored part of that small little vignette in the bottom left shows more park, but the site plan shows the drive-through and some parking kind of cutting into that. So I think it's important just to note that. I know you still have to work through the site plan, and I know that's still the 1.52 acres, but I think drawings matter. And so I just sort of point that out for the benefit of the board. The question I have for you is the 12 staff review comments that I think are very well thought out and stated. They seem reasonable to me. They obviously require some more design work. Are you in general agreement with those and have a good sense for being able to incorporate those moving forward?
Mark, I might need those read to me one more time. I don't have them in front of me.
Well, I'll try to quickly just maybe go through them. Prior to site plan review, the plat shall be recorded. Site plan review process, obtaining a zoning permit for proper uses. Impervious area should not exceed 70%. Having a certified arborist taking a look at the property. The dumpster location being to the side of the rear. There's a lot of language in here about foot candles and site lighting. Traffic study, which obviously you're going to have to do anyway with SCDOT. Some architectural design guidelines, brick 4-foot high architectural brick walls. We talked about right in, right out. You feel like you can achieve that. And the right-of-way buffer proposed to be reduced. Try to work with staff to revise the edge of that pavement radius on Old Parsonage Road, and then all other site plan requirements. I mean, they seem like reasonable requests from the staff. I appreciate them. A general sense for that from you?
Yeah, I think the vast majority of them look very doable. So I don't, none of them jump out at me that, that, you know, that we can't live with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchant. Does anyone else have any question of the applicant? All right. Thank you so very much, sir. You have someone else with you too that would also like to speak in favor of this application, correct, Mr. Harper? Who do you have with you?
Well, I've got my my landscape architect. If that's who you mean, I can't quite tell who else is on. Is that Andrew? You have anything?
No, I'm just here to answer any questions if anyone had any technical questions. That's it.
Andrew, do you want to make a statement or any testimony regarding this case?
No, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Harper, does your landscape architect want to say anything? I want to
No,
give you
sir.
an opportunity, sir.
He wants to say he loves this plan.
All right. Very good. One last time, does anybody on the board have any questions, Mr. Harper or Ms. Smalls?
I was just going to ask, Mr. Harper, you said you have been working with various groups. Has the West Ashley Revitalization Commission been part of the group, one of the groups that you've been working with on this plan?
No, ma'am, I have not. We're working with them on some other projects, but have not met with them directly on this.
The only reason I ask is because I think some of the opposition is coming maybe from that group. So I think if you're going to be taking a look, going back a little bit and taking a look at the plans, you know, it just might be worth being in touch with those folks.
Absolutely, we will do that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Mr. Williams, I caught your hand at the last minute.
Yes, sir. Mr. Harper, Highway 61, I don't quite live in, I lived in West Ashley at one point, but I have some family in West Ashley, but that area of 61 seems to always be very congested with traffic. Will this gas station increase or decrease or have neutral traffic? Or you haven't done a study, right?
No, sir, we have not done the traffic study. I guess I don't feel like it would increase traffic. I feel like there would be more folks potentially using it that are already on the road. But our hope is that, you know, when the park is finally built and you've got, you know, a place to walk and to bike, maybe you'll take a couple of cars off the road from folks who are doing that. But you know, at one time this was a grocery anchored shopping center with all different kinds of tenants in there, and you know, technically that is gone, and so we feel like this will be a net reduction from that, but certainly not an increase.
Oh, Mr. Borkin.
With all the discussion with traffic, and I guess I'm just kind of a common sense kind of guy. And Mr. Harper, I was going to ask if you agree with this assessment. I think there's a gas station right across the street right now, the Circle K, and there's a Hardee's next door to it. The traffic that's on that road is simply going to be the traffic that's on the road. Those are folks going and coming that live in neighborhoods. Those businesses aren't going to increase any of the traffic. And in fact, you know, the folks that come to your fast food restaurant are not likely to pull over to the Hardee's next door and shop somewhere else. It's going to be one or the other. And the ones going across the street to that gas station aren't going to be coming to yours after they leave it. So I guess, would you agree? I don't see additional traffic occurring that's not already there. Where they stop may be divided up somewhat with the other businesses. But do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. That's all I got.
A lot of great questions, folks. I appreciate that. Let's bring everything out to the surface. Okay. Looking around and scanning, no more questions, or do we have any other questions? Okay. And Ms. Working, do we have anybody to speak in opposition tonight?
We have a speaker in support. Because we first hear from the speakers in support.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought we
Yeah.
got past all that. Okay. Who do we have next, Ms. Working?
I'm getting him on right now.
Thank you.
Hey there.
Hi,
Good afternoon,
Scott.
sir.
Can
Hi.
you please raise your right hand? I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth I do.
I swear to tell the truth. What was the rest of it?
And nothing but the truth I do.
Nothing but the truth I do.
And then just state your full name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Scott McElhaney. I live at 305 Pitt Street in Mount Pleasant.
Mr. McElhaney, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Please tell us why you're in support of this application.
I own the property immediately adjacent to this lot at 2575 Ashley River Road that the public would probably know as the Advanced Auto property. And I purchased that property in 2015 while there was still a dilapidated shopping center next to my property. So I've seen all phases of that property except for when it was a nice functioning grocery anchored center. So during my ownership, it's been a dilapidated shopping center. And for most of my ownership, it's been an abandoned parking lot. So from my perspective, things can only get better. I love this site plan. I never would have anticipated that this is what would be proposed. I thought that most likely it would be reintroduced as some other large shopping center when I first bought this Advanced Auto property. So the fact that you have roughly 4.5 acres, it's going to be a passive park and fire station, and only 1.5 acres, it's going to be retail. I think it's important to compare the density of what it used to be when it was a truly functioning shopping center to what is now being proposed. So you're going from a shopping center that was what, about 60 to 80,000 feet at one time with a sea of parking to now a building that's going to be proposed as a 5,000 square foot building on 1.5 acres. To me, it's a no-brainer. I think it's a great idea. I think it achieves what Mr. Boykin said the neighborhood's goal is, which is one of the goals, which is less density. This is way less dense. You're going from 60 to 80,000 feet and a sea of parking to a 5,000 square foot building on 1.5 acres. So I love it. I'm all in support of it.
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. Please hold tight.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. McElhaney? I see no questions. Thank you so very much, Mr. McElhaney, for your testimony tonight.
My pleasure.
Ms. Working, do we have anyone else to speak in favor?
No, we do not have anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Working. Board, at this time, do we have any other general discussion? So at this time, I'll bring this case closed to the public. And at this time, we'll entertain a motion to either approve or deny. Okay, Mr. Boykin. Oh, wait.
Mr.
Got two
Chair,
hands up, but Mr. Boykin was first.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, a point of order, and I guess I'll also ask Mr. Yuji, and this will be out of order. If I make a motion regarding the 2 special exceptions, may I include one of the variances in that motion? Would that be proper, and could I do that?
It has to be heard.
Has to be heard separately. Understood. Okay. All right. Well, I was going to actually make I couldn't make a motion to defer some of those variances, may I? Or that has to be all done separately?
Well, the applicant would have to ask for the deferral.
Understood.
We have speakers for the variances, different speakers. So.
Understood. Okay, then I'll back up then. Okay, well, that makes the problem simpler. All right, well then in the matter of BZA case number 01-21-00440 and BZA-01-21-00441, I make a motion that the application for the special exceptions be granted. Bear with me 1 second while I get my pages in order here.
Mr. Boykin, before you go on, I think you had, Jenny, you have one attendee with their hands up. Jason Crowley.
Yeah, he's one that's going to speak for the variance case.
Okay, okay.
I've already.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anybody.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Mr. Boykin.
I'm sorry, I had all my pages spread out and I was trying to get them back in order so I could go through the criteria. My apologies. I find in criteria 1 that it is consistent with the recommendations contained in the Charleston County Comprehensive Plan and the character and underlying zoning district is indicated in the district description. In saying that, you know, the whole purpose of the overlay district is to have multiple uses that are compatible with one another. And in this case, I will not separate out the 1.52 acres as a standalone issue. The tract's not even subdivided, that it is a proposed use for the entire tract, which includes the park and the fire station. If that's not multi-use, I don't know what is. The 75 or nearly 75% of the property being conserved in a park and or a public safety building, which is going to be an amenity to that area. The transformation of this property from one of blight and a nuisance into this total plan, you know, it's exemplary and admirable that this undertaking was even started. I think that the gas station and fast food on the corner is de minimis when it comes to looking at the totality of this project and the impact it's going to have on drainage and flooding in the area, as well as public access and of a pocket park, for lack of a better expression, walking trail, pond, playground, and parking for that area. So I think it absolutely is consistent. I think the folks in that community are going to enjoy access to green space that they might not otherwise have. And the sheer conversion of all that impervious surface back to green space with trees, that, you know, water absorption. I mean, I can go on and on, but I won't. I just think the benefits far outweigh any impact that the gas station is going to have. And again, it's next across the street from one gas station, the next door to a fast food restaurant. It almost makes me grin that would be an issue. Going to criteria number 2, it is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity and will not adversely affect the general welfare, character, and immediate community. Again, I don't know how you make the argument given the nature of that area and what's already there and how it's used. And again, I will go back to Mr. McElhaney's remarks. You know, when it was a full-fledged supermarket with strip mall and all of those buildings and again, a full parking lot of customers, this is negligible as far as the impact of traffic and or density compared to what was there. And in fact, what might have been able to go there, I looked through the whole uses of auto storage, auto repair shops. I mean, there's nothing stopping these folks from developing the entire property, you know, to industrial, you know, to everything that is allowed under the uses themselves and the ones that are under special exceptions. So again, it's commendable that this much property might be saved and create the less density, less traffic. Criteria 3, adequate provision is made for such items as setbacks, buffer, including fences, landscaping, protect adjacent properties from the possible adverse influence of proposed use, such as noise, vibration, dust, and glare, traffic congestion, similar factors. I would just go to say that 4.22 acres of buffer, trees, green space, and ponds would be more than anybody would ever have to put up as far as landscaping. So it clearly meets that criteria. Number 4, where applicable, will be developed in a way that will preserve and incorporate any important natural features. Well, that really doesn't even apply because it's just a concrete jungle, for lack of better expression. It's one big sheet of asphalt and a dilapidated building. So anything is going to be an improvement. So that's just it goes without saying. Number 5, complies with all applicable rules, regulations, laws, standards of the ordinance, including but not limited to any use conditions, zoning district standards, or site plan review requirements of this ordinance. Again, these requests for the park and for the fast food / gas station are all permissible, either under special exception or otherwise. So it meets that criteria. Number 6, vehicle traffic and pedestrian movement on adjacent roads shall not be hindered or endangered. In consultation with the applicant, he's in agreement not to allow folks to be able to cross over the median or center line, leaving the property where they would have to cross 2 lanes of traffic. He's agreed to a right turn in, right turn out. That's really not going to be an issue. They'll have additional access on Old Parsons Road that goes to a traffic control device. Again, not an issue. I don't see it. Sidewalks will be where they have to be. And then you've got parking and a nearly 4.22 acre park and a fire station. Again, I don't see how there's going to be any issues with pedestrian traffic there, so I find it meets that criteria. That said, let me go down the long list of conditions with a couple additional ones. Number 1, prior to site plan review approval, the plat to create the 1.52 acre parcel shall be recorded, and the applicant shall record an ingress egress easement for access to the TMS number 355-06-00-006. Number 2, the applicant property owner shall complete the site plan review process prior to obtaining zoning permit for proposed uses. Number 3, the impervious area shall not exceed 70% of the 1.52 acre parcel pursuant to Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, section 9.3.6.d.3. Number 4, the applicant shall consult a certified arborist regarding the pathway surfacing and pathway location adjacent to the 47-inch DBH Grand Live Oak. Certified arborist shall provide documentation to county staff for review and approval prior to construction of the recommended pathway. The certified arborist shall be on site to provide on-site oversight during installation and fertilization and treatment for the tree. Number 5, the dumpster shall be placed to the side or rear of the building, screened from the public view with sufficient landscaping in the tree island as determined by county staff. Number 6, in no case shall foot candles from the site lighting sources measured individually or in aggregate exceed 0.5 at the rights of ways. All lighting shall be in compliance with the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, section 9.6.4.c. Maximum average foot candles shall not exceed 5-foot candles as depicted on photometric plans, with a maximum not to exceed 12-foot candles close to light sources. Maximum foot candles under gasoline canopies and outdoor sales lots shall not exceed 30-foot candles. Light sources, light bulbs, shall not be visible. They shall be shielded to reflect down onto the ground and not out onto the streets or neighboring property. Number 7, a traffic study is required pursuant to Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, section 5.12.6.c. Number 8, the proposed building shall comply with the architectural design guidelines listed in section 9.6.3.a, general design, section 9.6.3.b, building materials in section 9.6.3.c, building color of the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance. Architecture of the gas canopy shall have a pitched/peaked roof with a substantial brick post. Hold on a second. If that's all of them or not. Hang on a second. I don't know that I see a number 9. Is that Ms. Working? Is that all 8 of them? Is there another one?
9 through 12.
9 through 12. Hang on, let me find that page. My apologies again. seem to have misplaced it.
It's on the screen if you can see the screen.
Let me do that. I'm sorry. Thank you. I had too many papers in front of me. I was trying to get it all together. Thank you. Number 9, the 4-foot-high architectural wall shall be brick located within each right-of-way landscape buffer and extend the length of each buffer to screen the gas pumps and vehicular use. Number 10, if approved by SCDOT, Ashley River Road entrance shall be right in, right out only. Number 11, where the old Parsonage Road right-of-way buffer is proposed to be reduced, the applicant shall work with staff to revise the edge of pavement radius to allow vehicular circulation around gas pump stacking spaces. Number 12, the applicant shall meet all other site plan review requirements. And then I will add number 13 and number 14. Number 13, that the applicant may not bring any special exception or variance request before the BZA prior to its April 2021 meeting to allow planning staff adequate time to review and formulate its report. And then number 14, and I'll let Mr. UG correct me if this is not properly worded, that these special exception approvals in this matter are or will be considered invalid or vacated or voided should the Charleston County Greenbelt funded park project purchase for the remaining 4.22 acres fail to come to fruition.
I think that's fine. You may just want to say that it's contingent upon the sale for the Greenbelt project.
Okay, these, I'll change number 14, that these special exception requests, if approved, are only valid should the sale of the residual 4.22 acres occur and the closing as well, or however we want to word that, so that that transfer of property to the St. Andrews Public Service District for use as a park is completed.
And I believe on number 13,
yes.
Well, what you mentioned, the applicant not bringing the other requests. Has the applicant agreed to, I believe the deferral is the proper language?
I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. That, well, I don't know that I can defer the variances because we've not gone into those and they have to be heard. I guess I was trying to say, okay, how about this? I'll word it this way. That in the event that the any or all of the remaining variances are deferred, that the applicant will not bring them before the BZA prior to its April 2021 meeting.
Yes.
Quite the mouthful, so thank you.
Second.
You've heard the motion. We have a second. Mr. Woodall with the second. Thank you. Ms. Workin.
Mr. Ray, we do have a speaker. I apologize. I thought he had signed up for the 7 variance cases, but he wanted to speak about all the cases, but only one time, I think. I'm going to bring him on if that's okay. Would this be a good time?
Jenny, is he speaking in opposition or do you know?
Yes.
So
Case is
Mr. Ray, I think you need to recognize him as speaking in opposition.
Mr. Chair, I'll be happy, since I was in the process of making this motion, to make, if I can do this, a motion that we reopen for public comment so that the speaker may be heard. If I could get a second, and then that way I'll hold this motion in abeyance, if I may, with right to just reinstitute it after that, if that's permissible.
Board, at this time, we'd like to make a motion. I'd like to get a motion to allow this individual to come in and speak in opposition. Does
Give a
anyone
motion to allow the speaker to speak in opposition.
All right, we have a motion to allow by Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
I second.
Ms. Smalls, thank you so very much. At this time, Ms. Working, could you please bring forth the person that wants to speak in opposition?
You need a vote on the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You need a vote
Thank
on
you.
the motion.
Ms. Working, could you please call for the vote?
Let's see. Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison, Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Marchant, Mr. Marchant, you're muted.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Miss Smalls,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
Sorry about that. All right, let's see.
Thank you, folks. It's unanimous.
Jason?
Hey.
Oh, there you are. Hi. Okay. Please raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
I do. Thank you all, and my apologies for the confusion. I have written my testimony to split up the special exceptions and the variances, so I wrote it both ways. So I'll start.
Mr. Crowley, please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, will do. So my name is Jason Crowley, Director of Communities and Transportation for the Coastal Conservation League, 131 Spring Street. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on these 2 special exceptions and 7 variances requested. The Conservation League is very concerned with this development proposal and urges the Board of Zoning Appeals to deny all 9 requests, the 2 special exception and 7 variances for this project, because they are not in compliance with the Charleston County Comprehensive Plan, the Ashley River Road Corridor Overlay District, nor the West Ashley Master Plan. As outlined in the Planning Director's report, the Comprehensive Plan recommends this area to be compatible mixed-use development in a land use pattern that includes a variety of housing types, retail, service, employment, civic, and compatible industrial uses. And the comprehensive plan states that impacts on local street systems and land use patterns shall be minimized through quality site design, provision of public transit access, and design of local road connections. A gas station and fast food restaurant failed to meet these recommendations. Neither establish a mixed-use area or provide any benefits to local street systems and land use patterns. Instead, a gas station and fast food restaurant provide only single use and increase traffic in an area by necessitating more driving to this location. The purpose of the Ashley River Corridor Overlay District was to improve traffic safety, improve the scenic quality of the area, and create consistency with the City of Charleston's land use design standards. And a gas station, fast food restaurant are inconsistent with the village commercial area of the overlay district. This area is intended for less intense commercial development with a high priority of pedestrian connectivity between businesses and neighborhoods. And a gas station and a fast food restaurant do not prioritize pedestrian connectivity, and in fact increase risk of pedestrian fatalities by concentrating automobiles in an area whose plans include a public park in the immediate vicinity. And the West Ashley Master Plan identified this specific property as a redevelopment node for a small mixed-use neighborhood center and recommends smaller buildings fronting the streets to create a pedestrian-friendly environment, of which a gas station and fast food restaurant do not meet those recommendations. And as mentioned a year ago, a large portion of the property was purchased with Charleston County Greenbelt funds for nearly $3 million to create a public park that can also serve as space to handle floodwaters from king tides and stormwater runoff as a benefit to the surrounding community. It was never mentioned that the remaining development would be turned into a gas station and fast food restaurant, and the site plan for the park is inconsistent with the site plan for the gas station and fast food restaurant presented tonight. Gas stations are notorious for polluting our waterways with petroleum running off the property into our marshes and creeks, and this park should not be intended to be a stormwater pond for polluting gas station and fast food restaurant. This application is contrary to what the public was led to believe their taxpayer dollars were investing at this site. Therefore, the board should deny these special exceptions and variances without condition, since they do not support the use that fits with the character and recommendations of the Comprehensive Plan, Overlay District, West Ashley Master Plan, and could negatively impact the future park that was just purchased with Greenbelt funds. Thank you very much.
Sorry, my mic was mute. Thank you, Mr. Crowley, for your testimony. Mr. Williams has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Crowley. Thank you for coming. If you don't mind, could you elaborate a little bit on how you feel like traffic could be increased? How would traffic be influenced, just from what you were saying?
Well, in the case of a gas station and a fast food drive-through, you are directing traffic, you're directing cars to this property instead of creating a more pedestrian-friendly environment. The overlay district is trying to create more safety, but by having a drive-through facility, you're bringing cars directly to the area where pedestrians are supposed to be congregating at this public park that has already been purchased with Greenbelt funds. So you're putting people and automobiles at direct conflict with one another, which poses a major risk for a pedestrian fatality. And this is the very reason why on the opposite side of the county in James Island, where a similar request for a drive-through on Maybank Highway was specifically denied because of the risk of pedestrian fatalities as a result of the drive-through.
Also, could you elaborate a little bit about how you base the runoff pollutants and runoff gas? What are that?
I mean, that's something that has been studied and analyzed through a number of different examples over the years of gas stations. You know, you have the dripping out of pumps and you have the amount of cars that are coming through that often leak toxic materials. And so you are increasing the risk by putting a gas station on the edge of a marsh and next to a park that is specifically intended to be a floodable stormwater park. You are having the opportunity for the fuel that leaves that gas station to go straight into the very area that is supposed to be capturing and storing stormwater and also attracting the public to go to that area. And you heard the applicant earlier didn't provide any of that study to be able to argue the contrary to this board. So until that's presented, you have to essentially assume that you are going to be creating a potentially toxic environment in this area.
And lastly, in your view and the community's view, what would be a good proposal? What would be a good building or lack thereof in that space?
You know, I think that what came about through particularly the West Ashley Master Plan, and I encourage this board because Charleston County, while not a sponsor of it, was very much so engaged with the West Ashley Master Planning process. This area was identified and had visuals that were presented as part of the charrette process that showed small mixed-use retail buildings in this area. Now, of course, it didn't come with the proposal with this large park, which is a positive aspect for this, this site, but was not considered in conjunction with a gas station and drive-through restaurant. I think something that the community was expecting was more of a retail, and maybe you might have residential above and retail below, something similar, more like what the developers did on Pullman Boulevard with the Kick and Chicken development, where you have a very pedestrian-friendly restaurant space that's right up to the main boulevard area with outside dining, and then you have office and retail uses above. You don't have a drive-through and gas station in front of a park.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Borkin has a question for you now, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Crowley. How are you, sir?
Doing very well, thank you.
Just a couple of things. I guess it was testified to tonight that there is no closed deal with the Greenbelt on this property. But that's not happened yet.
However, the Greenbelt board did approve this, so the number that I referenced, which is 2.8 million, I said nearly 3 million, but that is something that was approved by the Greenbelt board. I don't have the details about the closure, but there is public dollars that have been approved for this property for a park, and it was presented, and you can see that the plan that was presented, as Mr. Marchant mentioned, is not consistent with the site plan that is presented tonight. And I think that's where you're getting a lot of the public opposition from.
Understood. And that's one of the reasons why, well, when I get back to my motion, we're trying to bind the closure of that deal between the GAB and the property owner relative to these requests. But the other question I've got with you is that the place in its current state, I mean, you know, the pollutants and the sheer runoff of what's literally a asphalt desert, you know, how much is that hurting the Church Creek Basin? How much runoff is that contributing the years and years and years it sat in derelict state with cars and tractor trailers parked all over it, leaking oil and gasoline and diesel fuel, because it was basically just a, you know, a big parking lot for whoever wanted to park their vehicles there. Even you would have to agree that the removal or the abatement of that continued pollution and runoff would be a good thing, would you not?
Sure, but this is also the same reason why the West Ashley Revitalization Commission was formed and created the West Ashley Master Plan, and why Charleston County and the city of Charleston created an overlay district in this area that do not recommend the very thing that's being applied for, is because as sites like this are being redeveloped, we should be redeveloping them for something better and something that is consistent with the community vision and needs. I heard mentioned tonight that there is a Hardee's and a gas station across the road. Well, if those were, that property was to be redeveloped, it would be redeveloped again under the purview of this overlay district, and we would be having to go through the same process again because it is inconsistent with the recommendations of the zoning overlay. And so as we are trying to transform our community, we don't want to stick with the status quo. Now, yes, it's great that they provided a Greenbelt purchase here, but that doesn't mean that we do a park, but then go back to the very thing that we're trying to get rid of. We are trying to strive for the best, and one would think that you would want to have something a little bit more pedestrian and community friendly than a gas station and a fast food restaurant. You should be driving people to a park, not spending $3 million of taxpayer money in order to create essentially a stormwater pond for a gas station.
Well, Mr. Crowley, I would give you the King David analogy here, that the person speaking on behalf of the owner has said that they've examined this property and tried to find a viable commercial activity where they could make this work. Would you be willing to forego the entire project and just let it remain as is if that was what would hold up this deal, so to speak, in the sense of preserving 4.22 acres? If they walk away from the table and we still sit here and look at this blighted, you know, ugly, decrepit state of a former grocery store, that's where we find ourselves here tonight, is trying to make a compromise. Are you not in favor of any compromise?
I don't believe that it is for the Board of Zoning Appeals to be making business deals and compromises. I believe it is for the Board of Zoning Appeals to be looking at whether or not a project is compliant with the overall zoning for this area. And a project that requires 9 applications, 2 special exceptions, and 7 variance requests demonstrates that this is not a property design that is appropriate for this area. Now, it may also be a lesson for Charleston County as a whole that we shouldn't be doing Greenbelt applications contingent upon a commercial development that results in something that the community doesn't want. The community was led to believe that they were going to be getting a neighborhood park that might come with some commercial, but instead they're getting a gas station with a park that is essentially going to be nothing more than a stormwater pond as a result.
Well, going back to one of your earlier comments about, you know, that this gas station would be contaminating Church Creek because it's right beside the creek, that doesn't appear to be what I see. I see other parcels of property clearly well between the creek and this particular corner. It would have to leach all the way across those properties to get to the creek. You know, and I guess my point is, you know, there's already a gas station across the street. You know, again, it is permitted by the special exception. If Charleston County council doesn't want these special exceptions to apply to these overlay districts, they could certainly strike that use and eliminate it entirely. And then in addition to that, there's a whole litany of uses involving auto repair shops, auto storage. I mean, all those things are out there that certainly leaking, broken down cars sitting there at mechanic shops probably aren't good either. This particular person would have the ability to develop that entire property. I mean, or in fact, rebuild, you know, I guess whatever they would be allowed to do as far as rehabilitating the property and using it in its current state. That's what I'm getting at is, to me, my position looking at this is that it's the totality of the entire property, not just a gas station and a fast food restaurant. And that's why I agreed with staff initially on that premise, but it's not even been subdivided yet. It's still one big property. And so I just wanted to hear you out on that. And I hear your concerns. I don't agree, but I do understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borkin. Anyone else has a question for Mr. Crowley? Thank you so very much for your testimony and your responses, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, at this time, is the applicant available? He has 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. Michael Harper. I don't really have so much of a point as I guess that number one, no, the property has not been closed in the back, and I guess I'll just restate what I said from the beginning. I mean, we live in the real world, and we're excited about, obviously, about seeing this park developed and folks being able to use it. And we have to look at the totality of the plan here. And so we feel like this park is a huge win, and we feel like the development on the corner will be very attractive for folks who are using the park. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Does anyone have any questions on Mr. Harper at this time? Thank you, sir.
I have a sort of question, sort of comment, just a request for clarification, I guess, for Mr. Harper. So a lot of our comments received from the public have kind of been about a change in the plan. You know, the original plans have been adjusted so that there's less park. Can you just verify that it was always the plan that the county would only own that 4.2 acres and the rest would be a separate commercial development? Can you just verify that?
Yes, ma'am. That has been the plan from the beginning. That the subdivision was roughly going to be about 4.2 acres to Greenbelt and to PSD, with the remaining corner parcel coming to us. And I do think there's been a little bit of misinformation kind of flying around, because the plan has always been from the day we started this conversation that there be a park of roughly that acreage and that a development on the corner of the remaining. And so we've never had any kind of plan of taking away the park or reducing the size of the park. Those acreages have been the same from the beginning. And so I think, and you know, Ms. Working sent me a bunch of the letters, and I read a lot of them. And I think a lot of folks have been out there in some way, you know, thinking that the park was going away, and it wasn't. This was all part of a larger plan, we feel like, to make that happen. So that's been consistent from the beginning.
Ms. Nelson, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Thank you all. Okay. I guess the next thing is to go back and Mr. Borkin to briefly state your motion, since you did have the floor and we did didn't see the other applicant that wanted to be in opposition. So if you could just briefly restate your motion, sir.
That's fine. As I previously made the motion, which is incorporated herewith and restated in summary, that I move to grant the applications for the special exceptions contained in BZA cases 01-21-0040 and 00441 for the that I found that it met all the criteria which has been previously stated, that I included the I believe it was 14 conditions as I previously stated, and so move.
Attorney Hughes, does that work? Can we do it that way?
Yes, as long as everyone recalls, I think it was the language for 13 and 14. The others were presented, offered by staff. So I think it's fine.
Very good. Do we have a second?
We're gonna have a conversation about it?
Yes, you can have discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Williams.
We need a second. Did we get a second?
I'm sorry, I thought
there was a second. Jenny, has there been a second?
Who's Whittle? Okay, thank you. Now you can have a discussion.
Okay, now we can have a discussion. Thank you. Mr. Williams, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, sir. First, I don't believe that these special exceptions should be granted because, in my opinion, I agree with the county, what the county was saying concerning 1 through 6 approval criteria for special exceptions 1 through 6, where it does not fall in line with 1 through 6, and specifically, so I heard that, and in my thought process, I don't believe that that it's compatible with number 2 and number 3. Number 2 being is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity and will not adversely affect the general welfare or character of the immediate community. So judging from what I heard about the comprehensive plan, the plans that were put in place in the past, and from the letters, the neighborhood concerns, the speaker's concerns, additional waste, additional gasoline runoff concerning the gas station. That's why I don't believe that it is compatible with number 2. And number 3, I don't believe it's compatible with number 3, where it says adequate provisions and is made for such items as setbacks, buffering, including fences and or landscaping to protect adjacent properties from the possible adverse influence of the proposed use, such as noise, vibration, dust, glare, odor, traffic, congestion, and similar factors. I don't believe that this project it doesn't meet the criteria for the comprehensive plan, but also I don't believe that this meets the criteria for concerning traffic congestion. It being in Highway 61, where it's located at, and the communities had a plan to decrease the amount of traffic, make it where it's less, more walking traffic and less driving traffic. But that's why I don't believe that it meets number 3, concerning traffic congestion, concerning noise and odors, and beyond that, I believe pollutants as well from a gas station. There has not been I didn't see a traffic study showing that there's going to be a decrease in traffic, concerning traffic congestion, concerning pollutants. I haven't seen information on that. I'm familiar with pollutants where you can actually do possible studies where you see what the current pollutants levels are, and then you can do a study where you would have you'll be able to estimate the amount of particulate matter concerning traffic that when you increase exhaust in that area. So that is my thought process on those criteria, and that's why I believe that that we should not grant the special exceptions that's listed in the BZA application concerning special exceptions 0121000440 and 0121000441. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Williams, I want to make a point to you. If you notice that on item 12, he still has to go through site plan, and then the application still has to, it was called out that he has to do a traffic study.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we don't have that information in front of us, but I do want to make you aware of that. He has to complete a site plan
Yes,
according to staff regulations.
Yes, sir. And as it stands at this point in time, I don't believe that the application meets the criteria concerning the general welfare or character of the immediate community. For number 2.
Point well taken, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Mr. Williams. I must say that. Thank you. Any other discussion?
Jenny, can I ask you a question?
Ms. Allison, you got the floor?
I just want to clarify, Jenny, that this site will still go in front of the city of Charleston. That's yet to happen. So that'll happen after us for the portion that is in the city limits, or no?
No.
Because that's listed in the staff review.
Jennifer, I think that had to do with the driveway, right? What they're talking about?
Part of the proposed driveway at this time overlaps with Charleston parcel. It's Mr. McGowan, his parcel. So for that driveway, the city of Charleston has to approve of that as well.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Ms. Allison?
Yes, I did. Thanks, Jennifer.
Any more discussion? Good point, Ms. Allison. Okay. So you've heard the motion. You got a second by Mr. Woodall. Ms. Working, could you please call the roll for the vote?
No other discussion?
I don't see any hands, Ms. Working, unless you see some. I don't see any hands.
Okay. Mr. Ray?
Aye.
Miss Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Marchant?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Ms. Smalls?
Opposed?
Okay. Mr. Williams?
Opposed.
Okay. And Mr. Woodall?
Aye.
Mr. Woodall?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay. It passes 7-2.
All right. Thank you, board, for your vote. I appreciate everybody's voting their opinion. That's very good. That's very healthy for this board. We need that. Very good. What I'm going to do right now, board, it is 7:15. I'd like to take a 5-minute break and we can resume at 7:20. Okay? So at this time, let's resume back at 7:20.
Thank you.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So at this time, we have the next case, which is case BZA 01-21-00442. You want to do them one at a time, or you want to just do them all one time, Jenny?
Well, it depends. If he's requesting to defer all of them except for the last one, which is that 448, however, whatever makes the most sense.
All right.
We don't normally do things this way. We're trying to make it work.
Yeah. So
I can go through all of them. I mean, the plan normally was to go through all of them, but if he wants to defer 6 of the 7 and just hear the one, we could do it that way. Whatever you want.
he wants to defer 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, and 47.
I believe so. Yes.
Make it easier. Mr. Harper, is that what you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, with your indulgence, if it would be possible to take up 448 and then to defer the others after that, that would be preferred, please, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we hear 448 first, if that's the pleasure of the board.
Need a second.
Second.
Need a vote.
All right.
For clarification, are you wanting to 00448 in front of the board now and defer the other variances?
We're
No.
changing the order in which we're going to present. Mr.
The
Williams.
applicant wants 0048 to be heard first, if I understand, and then he will decide if he wants to defer the others.
Very good. Did you understand that, Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. So let's bring that to a vote. Wait a minute. Anybody want to make a motion that we do move it to
Mr.
448?
Boykin has already made a motion.
You already made a motion. We have a second?
Mr. Woodall.
Mr. Woodall, okay. Ms. Working, could you call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Merchant,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Miss Switzer Smalls,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
All right. Let's move forward with 448. Unanimous.
Okay, yep. This is the 7th variance request, BZA 0121-00448. The variance request is from Article 9.6, Section 9.63E4 and 963E6 to orient the gasoline pump dispensers and majority of the parking along the primary street frontage in front of the proposed gas station building on a corner lot. This requirement is from the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, Chapter 9, Development Standards, Article 9.6, Architectural and Landscape Design Standards, Section 963, Architectural Design Guidelines. E4 states all corner developments shall have buildings located close to the corner with the majority of the parking to the side or rear. E6, building orientation states buildings shall be sited so that gasoline pump dispensers are located to the side of the building or located behind the building so that the building is between the pumps and the primary street frontage. If located in a corner lot, the building would have to be situated in the corner of the lot at the intersection. Next slide. These are the requirements for the other variances. You get. And yeah, this is the requirement for that particular variance that I read to you. And again, the zoning map showing it on the corner of Ashley River and Old Parsonage Road. Aerial photo. And zoomed out. And the overlay map, zoning map. Greenbelt plan. And some pictures. You can flip through the 448. So here, just showing kind of that angle at the corner where the building would normally be up front, but the variance request is to flip it. Next. And again, the site plan. Proven court plat and the proposed plat. As far as the criteria, we found that it didn't meet the criteria 1 through 7. We also asked to, if you are to approve this variance, to include all the conditions, and they were the same conditions from the previous case. The conditions 1 through 12. That's all I really have, unless you have questions.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Ms. Working, are those reasonings similar to the other reasonings that you don't believe it meets the criteria?
Correct, because this is an aesthetic architectural, and the overlay does point out that, you know, trying to get buildings closer to the street and pedestrian friendly, things like that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else has a question? Mr. Marchant?
I don't disagree with you, Ms. Working. I guess the question I have for staff is, as it relates to the park, we're in a little bit of a conundrum here because the intent of the overlay, which is to create architectural character around the street, unfortunately not existing anywhere else within the block, is certainly a valid and aspirational goal for any good development. The park is the amenity here, not the street. And so it's just, I just wonder if you could add some color to that comment in terms of the conversations you may have had at staff level.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like no matter where you put, if you put the pumps in the back, then they're going to be by the park. The pumps in the front, then the drive-through is by the park. So I don't know how else you can design it to make it best, you know, use next to the park.
Does anyone else have any questions of Ms. Working or staff? Mr. Boykin?
Ms. Working, as I'm looking at their site plan in relation to the proposed park, it looks like at least a portion of what's going to be next to the commercial use is going to be the fire station. I mean, that's going to take up some of that area that's going to be immediately adjacent to that commercial parcel, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Marchant. You know that, you know, it's a corner lot that makes things difficult to start with, and it's all trying to, I guess, maximize or use it most efficiently with the least impact on the community. But at least it has the park to buffer the rear of it, and you know, again, it's a difficult at best. I see what you're saying, that to flip it the other way, that would, it almost, it makes sense the way it's laid out to me, but I see everyone's points. Thanks.
Any more questions of staff? Any more questions of staff? Okay. Mr. Harper, you're back up again.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to be very brief. I know it's late, and again, appreciate everyone's time. But this is, you know, as we discussed earlier, the other 6 variances are things that we feel like we can certainly sit down and have a good conversation with staff and work out. This one, though, is pretty critical just from a standpoint of being able to use the parcel for the uses that we're talking about. And we look at it kind of like Mr. Boykin pointed out, or excuse me, Mr. Marchant pointed out, you're either going to be looking at tanks or at a canopy from the street, or you're going to be looking at a canopy from the park. And so as we look at it, we all know what these convenience store operators, how they like to lay things out and how things work for them. And so as we kind of studied the parcel, we said, well, let's make an attractive view for the folks from the park, and let's make it where there's actually a user that wants to come in and do the development, and we can kind of expedite the development of this new park and fire station. And I will say, our wish, our goal here, knowing that PSD wants to expedite construction of this new fire station, we would like for these 2 buildings to kind of blend together and be attractive from parsonage. So we understand what the canopies do. We understand folks' perception of that, but we do feel like this can still be a very attractive development, particularly for folks who are using the park. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have a question for you. Do you have tenants for the gas station and the fast food restaurants, and are you willing to disclose who they are?
Well, we have prospects. We don't have any one in particular. And you know, as you might imagine, tonight's outcome is I think is a big part of all of it. But we do have a lot of different prospects who would be interested. So I think it will be forthcoming.
Very good. Thank you. Does anyone, Mr. Boykin, I see you raise your hand, sir. Go right ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask Mr. Harper, and this goes to also our member, Mr. Williams. A lot of the community is, including Mr. Crowley, raised issues with increased traffic and so forth. And again, I go back to what I said before. 61 is a corridor. You know, it has traffic flowing all the time through there, simply from folks from Somerville and outlying subdivisions going in and out of Charleston, and that's never going away. The remark I want to make to you, Mr. Harper, in looking at the site plan, and it struck me that y'all very purposely have run the drive-through line to where you're almost funneling the traffic onto Old Parsonage Road, which would then bring that traffic out to a traffic control device to make reentry on, which is, we all agree, a congested Highway 61. But that traffic control device will be, you know, invaluable to getting those cars back into transit. And was that part of your thought planning when y'all were putting together this plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think from a development standpoint, when you're talking to restaurant and convenience store and retail users, you know, it's a big difference between which side of the road your property's on. You've got certain morning type users, you know, your Starbucks and your McDonald's, and you have your PM users that are obviously, you know, afternoon and dinner. And so the reality is that on a property like this, that's clearly on the morning side of the road, you have folks who are already coming down 61, heading to downtown, going to work. So the idea is that those folks are taking a right turn at the Highway 61 curb cut. They're either, you know, pulling into the canopies, to the tanks, or they're going around behind the building to get in the queue to go through the drive-through. And as all those folks exit, they're exfilling onto Parsonage Road to where they get to the light and they move on. So I disagree that this is necessarily a development that will increase traffic. I think it's folks who are on their way in the morning for the most part who are using this, and they're really making that trip anyway.
Well, I will go on record to say I absolutely concur with that thought process, because as sporty as the gas station and whatever fast food restaurant makes its home there, I don't think it's going to be what we call a destination. I think it's going to be a pit stop while someone's in transit going one way or the other in their conveyance. But I just think I like that. And I guess on another point that was brought up earlier about, you know, what kinds of uses are better than other kinds of uses. There's a retail strip mall right across the street, just down, I guess, on the other side of that Circle K gas station. And all of its parking is out by the highway. I mean, it's not hidden or pushed back. So this is not any way inconsistent with your parking being on the primary roadside versus the other. But, and again, and Mr. Marchant posted on that, I mean, there's so much use already there that's absolutely consistent with this. And I get the idea that one day maybe it all changes to something else, but they're all degrees of commercialization. And anyway, I think y'all did a good job with what you had to work with. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
And Mr. Harper, I probably should ask this question earlier, but I'm just curious, what other uses did you evaluate for the parcel, and why did you select this use over some of the other ones?
Well, we've done, as I believe somebody mentioned earlier, we've done some developments on Coleman Boulevard and Mount Pleasant. We've done some developments downtown. We try our best to do what you know, what is a proper and a good fit. We want to, you know, the context of where we're developing is important to us. And so we always feel like we build something nicer and more attractive than we have to, and generally more so than other developers. We try to go above and beyond, but at the same time, you know, it's also a matter of what actually works. And there's some give and take there as to what works and what doesn't. So we looked at a host of other uses, but the reality is that these are the two best and most immediate, which is why we feel like they're the ones to pursue.
Okay, thank you.
You're on mute. It's like you're muted. It looks like.
Go ahead, Mr. Williams. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the mouse.
No problem. Yeah, I was just gonna say you look like you're muted. So my question, Mr. Harper, why did you choose the gas station but not some other kind of store or something that fell in line with the zoning as it applies currently? In other words, something that fell more in line with the comprehensive plan or the overlay district. Why did you decide? Why did you all decide on that particular application versus something like a store?
Well, we did give some thought to some retail, you know, some retail strip buildings on this particular area. You know, there's a lot of development on Beast Ferry, and a lot of the strip retail that you know, that would typically go to this area is gravitating toward that grocery anchored development on Beast Ferry. And so to find, you know, some unanchored strip right here is tough to do. You know, the office prospects for this particular area are not great at the given time. And so, you know, when you take kind of strip retail and office off the table, you're really left with some things that, you know, really don't work. So these are the type uses that are most market ready.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Williams, you got another question?
I think that's it for right now. Thank you.
Ms. Allison, did I see your hand? No? Okay.
No.
Does anyone else have a question of the applicant? Ms. Working, do we have anyone else to speak in favor or support of this portion of the application?
I do not think so because the speakers already spoke. I don't see them on here anymore.
Would that work as well
Yeah.
for opposition?
Yeah, Jason said he just wanted to do the one comment. I misunderstood. I thought he wanted to wait for the variances, so.
Okay.
So that should be it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Board, do we have any other discussion? Okay, I don't see any hands. So at this time, I'd like to close this case to the public. And I'd also like to get a motion to either approve or deny.
Motion to deny.
Okay, Mr. Williams. You have to tell us why you want to deny it, Mr. Williams.
Motion to deny on, for reasons numbers 4, 6, and 7 in the approved criteria for variances. 4 being the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, highlighting public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance, highlighting zoning district as it applies right now. Also, number 6, the need for the variance is not the result of applicant's own actions. And number 7, granting of the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purpose of this ordinance. As it stated by the staff, it seems to contradict with the comprehensive plan and also the overlay districts that were established by the municipalities, various municipalities.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a second by Ms. Smalls. Very good. At this time, we'll bring it to a vote.
Discussion.
Discussion, excuse me, thank you. Does anybody want to have a discussion about this motion to deny? Any hands? Any questions? Discussion? Okay, I see no, oh, Mr. Merchant, I see you here at the last moment. Go ahead, sir.
Mine's really more of a comment, and it's and again, I'm struggling with this a little bit, just given my interest in elevating streetscapes. But when we look at this entire area of West Ashley and the surrounding properties, it is kind of interesting that this could either be catalytic in terms of starting anew and creating buildings on the street front, or it could be in concert with what is there. And I think that's really what's in front of us here is, do we allow it to fit within the existing conditions and protect the park, which is a place for people, or do we protect the street, which is a place for cars, in lieu of the park? And my opinion is that the park takes preference here because it's the people, and the fact that everything within about a quarter-mile radius north and south is of the same ilk of what's being proposed aids a little comfort in allowing me to suggest that. Although I appreciate the comprehensive plan's efforts to create more of a streetscape of buildings, I'm struggling with that stretch of 61 there, and whether or not this building is the catalytic opportunity to do that. So I'm in opposition of the motion and would prefer that the focus be on the park and having the gas pumps up towards the street.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Mr. Boykin.
I just want to say I concur with Mr. Marchant, and I think he makes some valid points. And, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and that is a depressed area out there to some extent, and certainly this particular property. And, you know, everybody would like to go 0 to 100, but I think sometimes it's going to be incremental steps, and this may be have some economic viability to that neighborhood and provide, you know, some favorable amenities for sure with the park. And so I do concur, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin. Anyone else? Going once. Anyone else? I see no hands. All right. At this time, Ms. Working, I'd like to bring it to a vote. If you would call the roll, please.
Jenny? Miss Working?
Ms. Working, you're muted.
And the motion is to deny based on 4, 6, and 7. Mr. Ray?
Nay.
Miss Allison?
No.
Mr. Boykin?
Nay.
Mr. Freeman? Mr. Freeman?
No.
Mr. Marchant?
No.
Mr. Nelson?
Nay.
Miss Switzer Smalls?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yay.
Okay. And Mr. Woodall?
Nay.
That motion fails.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, since that motion failed to deny, we apparently need a motion to approve.
Mr. Ray, I think you need to ask, is there a motion to approve?
Thank you. Thank you for the correct wording, Mr. Fuji. Is there a motion to approve? Boykin.
I will make a motion to approve in the matter of BZA case 01-21-0048. I move that we approve the request for variance. I find that it meets all 7 of the criteria, more particularly that there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. It's a corner lot for commercial use, and that entails difficulty in and of itself. Also, the issues with traffic trying to be abated. I think that the site plan is such that it's going to do the absolute most to minimize traffic impacts, and routing that traffic out onto Old Parsonage to a traffic control device makes good sense to me. So I think the situation of where the building has to go is a necessity for this to work. So I find it meets criteria 1. Criteria 2, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. A lot of these properties are not corner lots or at an intersection like this one. So I think it is unique in that condition. There are others, but I think it's a much rare occurrence that a commercial property is on a corner versus simple road frontage. So I find it meets criteria 2. Criteria 3, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to this particular property would effectively prohibit unreasonable restrict the utilization of it. I think the issue in trying to put the building in another location and all the other applications that go with that create more of a hazard with the traffic, as we mentioned before. And I think it would restrict its ability to be used as it's being proposed under those conditions. And I think in this case, it makes sense. The site plan makes sense to me. So therefore, I find it meets that criteria. Criteria 4, the authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of zoning district will not be harmed by granting the variance. Well, again, look at what's next to it. A blighted, dilapidated asphalt desert is where it is, and adjacent to it is a Hardee's. Across the street is a Circle K, and next to that is a CVS pharmacy. So no, I don't see how in the world it would negatively impact that. I do take note. I understand the intent to transform this area, but in this case, again, I think it's a reasonable request, and I think it fits, and it will be an amenity for the folks that live there. I don't think it's going to increase any traffic, and in addition, it is boxcarred to a 4.22 acre future park and also a fire station, both of which would be wonderful amenities for that neighborhood. And that part of the package absolutely is helping in the transformation of this neighborhood. Number 4, the authorization, the variance would, I'm sorry, excuse me. I guess that was number 4, wasn't it? Number 5. Criteria 5, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. That fact, the property may be utilized more profitably should a variance be granted, may not be considered in the grounds of variance. That's not what we're doing here. They can use the property for anything that's allowed in that area. And this is a special exception along with the many other things I went through tonight. So it doesn't obstruct that condition at all. And I agree that it meets that condition. Number 6, the need for the variance is not a result of the applicant's own actions. This is a planned, I guess, development of this entire parcel of property, which is affording a public park as well as a fire station for the San Andreas Public Service District, utilizing Greenbelt funds. There are, I think, at least 4 parties to this action, not just the applicant. So this is not his own actions. It is a combination of public need of green space, public need for a fire department that weigh in this as well. So I find it meets criteria 6. Criteria 7, granting the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan purposes of ordinance. Again, it is a special exception that county council has identified as being allowed in this overlay district. That's why we're here for this special exception that brought this variance, to be in play. But for the granting of the special exception, which has already happened, this variance would not have been required. So it does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan. And double check. I will make this motion with the following conditions. Pardon the length of all this. The following conditions will be included. Number 1, prior to site plan review approval, the plat to create a 1.52 acre parcel shall be recorded, and the applicant shall record an egress easement for access on through TMS number 355-06-00-006. Number 2, the applicant / property owner shall complete the site plan review process prior to obtaining a zoning permit for the proposed sites or proposed uses. Number 3, the impervious area shall not exceed 70% of the 1.52 acre parcel pursuant to the Charleston County zoning and land development regulations ordinance section 9.3.6.d.3. Number 4, the applicant shall consult a certified arborist regarding the pathway surfacing and pathway location adjacent to the 47-inch DBH Grand Live Oak. Certified arborist shall provide documentation to county staff for review and approval prior to construction of the recommended pathway. Certified arborist shall be on site to provide oversight during the installation and fertilization and treatment for the tree. Number 5, the dumpster shall be placed to the side or rear of the building, screened from the public view, with sufficient landscaping in the tree island as determined by county staff. Number 6, in no case shall foot candles from the site lighting sources measured individually or in aggregate exceed 0.5 right of ways. All lighting shall be in compliance with the county zoning and land development regulations ordinance section 9.6.4.c. Maximum average foot candles shall not exceed 5 foot candles as depicted on photometric plans, with a maximum not to exceed 12 foot candles close to light sources. Maximum foot candles under gasoline canopies and outdoor sales lots shall not exceed 30 foot candles. Light sources, light bulbs shall not be visible. They shall be shielded to reflect down onto the ground and not out onto the street or neighboring property. Number 7, traffic study is required pursuant to the Charleston County zoning and land development regulations ordinance section 5.12.6.c. Proposed, number 8, the proposed building shall comply with the architectural design guidelines listed in section 9.6.3.a, general design, section 9.6.3.b, building materials in section 9.6.3.c, building color of the Charleston County zoning and land development regulations ordinance. Architecture of the gas canopy shall have a pitch/peak roof with substantial brick posts. Number 9, the 4-foot high architectural wall shall be brick located within each right-of-way landscape buffer and extend the length of each buffer to screen the gas pumps and vehicular use. Number 10, if approved by SCDOT, the Ashley River Road entrance shall be right in and right out only. Number 11, where the old Parsonage Road right-of-way buffer is proposed to be reduced, the applicant shall work with staff to revise the edge of pavement radius to allow vehicular circulation around the gas pump stacking spaces. Number 12, the applicant shall meet all other site view requirements. And then I'll include condition 13 and 14 as I previously put on the special exceptions. Number 13 being that the applicant will not bring any deferred special exception or variance requests before the BZA prior to its April 2021 meeting to allow staff adequate time to review and formulate its report. And number 14, that the special exception approvals will be deemed invalid or void should the sale and closing for the 4.22 acres by the through the Greenbelt funded transaction to the St. Andrews Public Service District not come to fruition.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Woodall, second. Thank you. Ms. Working, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Discussion, Mr. Chair.
Or discussion? I guess I'm ready to get out of here too. Discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion? Ms. Working, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Okay. Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Marchant,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Miss Switzer Smalls,
Opposed?
Mr. Williams,
Opposed.
and Mr. Woodall.
Aye.
So yeah, you have 7 to 2, 2/3.
So it passes. Mr. Harper, congratulations on your application being passed. Within 10 business days, you will get information from staff letting you know the next step in the process. Once again, sir, congratulations on this application.
Thank you, sir.
And I was just going to say, if you all choose to defer the other 6 variances, we will need those revised plans on Monday, the 8th, so a week from today, in order to get everything on your agenda, the revisions on your agenda by the end of February.
Mr. Harper, is that your pleasure?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. She confused me a little bit. You're talking about for April?
Yes, we would need, if you want to go to the April meeting, we need the site plan, the revised site plans by Monday, the 8th, a week from today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was saying we couldn't do March because it would be impossible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Harper, we need you to just officially ask for the extension or the deferral, I should say, for all those cases, please.
Yes, sir. First of all, thanks again to everyone, and Church Creek Plaza will moves to defer those 6 variance applications. I don't know the number of them. I'm sorry, but we consent to deferring those until the April BZA hearing date.
Very good. Thank you. I don't think we need a motion on that to accept it. Okay. Ms. Working, do you have anything else for this board?
Just March, we are already starting getting those advertisements ready. We have 6 cases, 3 variances, and 3 special exceptions. And then just a reminder it's never too early to work on your continuing education. So if you have questions, please let me know.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Working?
I think that's it.
Very good. Mr. Boykin?
Ms. Working, did I notice in the agenda that there was going to be our annual business meeting prior to the next BZA meeting?
Yeah, all we're going to be able to do is just vote on, have the election right before. We'll have the election of officers right before the start of the meeting. That's it. I mean, we can't have food. It won't be in person.
Oh, Mr. Sandwich.
Yeah, you can have those delivered to where we are.
There you go. I like Mr.
Well, let me talk to Joel about that. Like a virtual pizza party or something.
You can do like one of those delivery services.
Yeah. Let me talk to my boss. But yeah, right now, all we have planned is just, quickly having the election right before the start of the meeting. And for the new members, I went over the rules and procedures with them. So they're good on those. So I went over with each new member, I went over those, so.
Ms. Working, are we gonna have any training during that time as well before?
No, we're not doing that either.
Okay. All right.
It's all self-study. Boring, sorry. I want to get a speaker, but yeah,
Maybe next year when COVID's gone, right?
yes, yes.
So you newbies, you missed a really big treat. Ms. Smalls, Mr. William, who else do we have that's new? Mr. Marchant, we thank you. I hope you enjoyed your first meeting. We look for more to come. I do enjoy your input. Typically, over the past decade, you see a divided board, and it's good to see the board have some diversity in it, where we vote how we actually feel and how our community wants us to move forward. And that's the primary goal of this board, to be a sounding board for the community in which you serve. And that's why you were elected to this board. So I thank you for your time and all the effort that you put forward in each and every vote. Mr. Hughie, you have anything you'd like to say?
Good night.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else,
Tired.
this meeting is currently adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
And we thank you. You have a good night.
All right, thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
So-
Good night.
Right.